Let's get into our game review. This is a big one for us. This is a no joke, big old review. We've never reviewed Gloomhaven.
I just missed it.
Yeah, just missed it. If you don't know what it is, it's the number one game on Board Game Geek. It is the biggest thing to hit our hobby in the last 10 years, probably, at least in terms of mass appeal. And, it was one of the first giant Kickstarters, and it's changed the shape of our hobby in a lot of ways. Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion is an attempt to take what was a $120 box that weighs as much as a small family and takes hundreds of hours to complete and is intimidating and scary, and put it in a shoebox sized box, sell it for $40 at Target or $50, somewhere in there, and make it accessible to the masses.
And Jesse, so far?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. What were you going to ask me?
No, I was just going to ask you if you can tell us a little bit about Gloomhaven outside of the marketing, which I just did.
Yeah, well, for people who don't know Gloomhaven, it's basically a party explores dungeons and ruins using their special skills to fight and plunder. That is the description on BGG. But it's funny because how generic that sounds, but how rich the narrative is. That's what I just love about Gloomhaven. What I didn't like about Gloomhaven was how long it took to set up. And as you pointed out, this one is much more accessible. Wow, is it more accessible? And literally, for people who don't know, you can pull it out of the box and start, read the sort of intro, basically just start playing. Yeah. Have everyone come sit down. I was ready. I got Alex. Look, let me just tell you. I drove to 3 Targets to get this on Saturday.
Yeah. So it can be difficult to find.
Yes. And I got Alex to play, and I was like, look, you can get home, you can relax. I'm going to need a couple hours to read through the rules. I didn't understand the first one, but I have a feeling it's going to be blah, blah, blah. And then I open it up and I go, Alex, I think we can play now.
Yeah.
And we did. We jumped right in. He did a really good job, I think, of just feeding you each of the important pieces of the rules that you need to understand right now within each successive scenario in 5 intro scenarios.
Yeah.
Let
me pause you real quick there, because I meant to say this up top, but we are going to do a spoiler-free review of Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. So Gloomhaven and Jaws of the Lion are games that have a lot of mystery to them. There's a lot of little tiny boxes that you can open, a lot of little envelopes that have things to open. It is sort of the, one of the first sort of classic legacy style games without legacy in the title. That's really, a campaign that changes as you play it and opens up new things, and unlocking things, and the mysteries in the story are all a huge part of the draw to this. So we're gonna do our very best to not spoil. I promise you, we won't spoil anything big. If we accidentally spoil a tiny thing, like something on an action card that's, in your starting hand, or a small plot point in the first few scenarios, then if you're worried about that, I would recommend you do not listen. But we're not going to spoil anything for you that you're not going to get, within the first hour that you're playing the game will be our goal.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, so carry on. So you had it out. You called for Alex. You were set up faster than you expected.
Yeah. And we did the first day we played 3 games, which is a lot for her. And it took a few hours. I'm sorry. I don't know how you play a game in 45 minutes. I know you can just go through rules.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you all about it.
But because we couldn't. And look, she's a bit more of a casual gamer. But it took a while. We also took some breaks and had dinner in between, but still. And we could only get 1 game in the next night, and then 1 game in, the other night. And then I played with my son, who's 9, which actually was really interesting, because he loved it. He loved it. And he just told me tonight, he goes, Dad, when we play next weekend, we're going to play once every night. We'll play Friday, we'll play Saturday, we'll play Sunday.
Oh my God, your son sounds exactly like that. That's a fantastic impression.
Stop. But yeah, he loves it. And why does Finney love it? He told me this. I didn't prompt him. this is why I like this game. He goes, number one, the story. Number two, buying things. Number three, the gameplay. Like he goes, the tactical gameplay that we were doing. But it was neat to just kind of see how, I just love that he chose the story first, because he really does. I think what's really important about choosing who to play this game with is you got to find somebody who loves the story, who's into it. Look, I played this. I think I told you before. We were chatting about it on the Facebook. A friend of mine bought this for me for my birthday a couple years ago.
The original, not Jaws of the Lion.
The original at Gloomhaven, and we'll just call him Rolo because that's his name. He was terrible to play with.
Should I get my finger on the shame button?
Yes. Wow, he was awful. And
what does that mean?
I was a scoundrel. I was a scoundrel. My character
but what character did you play in the game?
My character and I am a scoundrel. And so I'm supposed to be looting all the time. And he had a character, I forget which one it was, but his character was more about leveling up faster than me. And boy, did he. But he also got really angry that I was able to get all this treasure. And so what he decided to do was, when we were plotting to strategy together, he decided to not do that. So I would commit to a situation, and then he instead went to go loot. I was like, dude, what are you doing? And then he would laugh, and then we would lose, and we'd do the scenario again. This happened many, many times. And then I said, I don't think I want to play with you anymore. And he would laugh. And we did play a couple more times. We played a few. I probably played for like half of it. But I would read, and he wouldn't listen. And I really tried to be entertaining with it, right? But he he was also going through a really rough time, and he was just sort of taking everything. He's kind of gloomy. He's really entertaining to be around, but he's gloomy, man. So I thought it'd be perfect. But I mean, and every time he read a card, he would always he's the kind of guy who he'll read a card and he'll make up what happens, and it'll be dirty and something. He's like, oh my, and he'll look at it I can't believe that this happened. The game says that, but he does that every time.
Sounds like he was the Cylon in the game.
Yeah. And I will say it's interesting that there's a character that is similar to him that this whole story is about. This is not a spoiler. This is the premise.
Yeah.
And it's named after him. I think that's hilarious. Wow. I get so much joy out of that. I don't know how far you got in the game, but I'm not going to say anything. But wow, is it funny?
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a horrible experience of way to play Gloomhaven. I haven't had that problem because I only play it solo.
No, you can't do that.
And I have no interest in not playing it any other way.
Stop.
Now,
part of the beauty of this is in the negotiations and not knowing what the other person is going to do and talking loosely about what you're going to do and not saying I'm going to move 3 spaces, but I'm going to charge here. I'm going to charge that guy over there, and I'm going to do this. You keep in the narrative, and you can't. You can math everything out when you're by yourself.
All right. I will say this. I would prefer to play this with another person if they lived in my house with me and we had a weekly time where we got together and played it at night a few times a week, or if I all of a sudden felt like I wanted to play it and they were around, I could say, hey, let's sit down and play. This would have been perfect. This would give me my dream game in college. What I don't like is I lose interest in something if I can't play it when I want to play it. Or beyond that, especially if it has an ongoing thing, if it's got a hook to it, if I'm excited to get my character leveled up, if I'm doing this, if it is, and Gloomhaven is all about that. One more campaign, one more scenario, right? It's got that sort of addictive feeling of one more scenario and I'll level up, one more scenario and I'll get this next thing. I hate the idea of putting it back in the box and being like, well, never know when we'll get this group back together. Well, that was okay, I guess. So to me, like, that's not enjoyable, and that kind of kills my enthusiasm for it. And I'll be honest, I guess we're jumping to a review here a little bit. I don't like the game enough to wait to play it. Like, I like it a lot, but it's not. I wouldn't want all my game nights to be that. Like, I wouldn't want all my game nights to be Gloomhaven. And I
This
think
is not like a group game night. This is our like Saturday. Aside from
but
normal
I don't have the B game night anymore. Like, I'm in a place in my life where I'm lucky to get, well, nobody has any game nights right now, but even before COVID started, I was lucky to get one, maybe two a week. And I'm just going to say, even if I was getting two a week, I wouldn't want one of them to be Gloomhaven. I like it a lot, but I don't like it enough for that. But it hits a perfect place for me as a solo game because it doesn't take up one of my nights. And I can get 80% of the enjoyment I would get with another person just playing it by myself. I mean, like, I'm getting the game. I'm really playing it. And I'm getting to experience two characters when I play it. I play it two-handed, which is the way you're supposed to play it. I really am making all the decisions. I'm getting all the leveling up thing. I'm like, so in many ways, I'm getting more.
Matt, before you go on, I'm sorry. Can you do me a favor? There's a button. I think it's right in front of you. It might say shame on it. If you could just press that.
Sure. Let me go ahead and find that. There we go.
Shame.
Yep. Okay. That's what you wanted right there?
Yeah. Now go on. Now keep
talking. So look, okay. So that's what I'm going to say. I like Gloomhaven enough to play it as a solo game. And I like it a lot. Even my solo game time is limited. So, like, I played it. I probably played, I played about 12 scenarios of it, which means I probably played 15 hours, 16 hours.
You said you played how many? 20, 12?
12. I played 12 scenarios of it.
Of Lion?
Yes, of Jaws the Lion. Yeah. Original Gloomhaven, I probably played about 30. I've never beat the original Gloomhaven. Jaws the Lion, Go ahead.
Did you solo Gloomhaven, the original too?
About half and half. About half and half. Okay. I had my own solo campaign that I probably got a little farther in than I got in my multiplayer campaign. So here's how I play it. You asked how I get through it in 45 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the shame button again on myself because I realized I did not mention the basic bullets of the game here. The designer of this game is Isaac Childress. I'm so, like, immersed in the board game world that I just assume, like, everyone knows who Isaac Childress is. And, like, so it's like if I was talking to film nerds and I, like, brought up Jaws, like, I don't need to tell you who directed Jaws. I don't know who directed Jaws, by the way. The artists of the game, though, deserve to be said because not everyone knows their names. Francesca Bayard, Kat Bach, David Bach, David Demarais, Alexander Elichev, Jason D. Kingsley, and Josh T. McDowell. Cephalofair Games is the publisher. That is Isaac's own publishing company. And I will just say that I know Isaac personally. I've had him on some podcasts in the past. I've hung out with him a few times at conventions. Lovely chap. Let me tell you how I complete these in 45 minutes. And I'm going to give a tip to some people. This is how I enjoy it. I did two things. One, I downloaded something called Gloomhaven Helper, which I discovered for the first Gloomhaven. And once I discovered it, I never went back. And luckily, they updated it for Jaws the Lion. Gloomhaven Helper makes it so that you don't have to track any of the monsters outside of their positions on the board. It's an app that will do all the monster cards for you. It will track their initiative. It will basically do about 60% of the bookkeeping that you have to do for you. Makes the games move so much faster. I don't have to check monster health. It's just right there on the app. I don't have to move chits around. I don't have to constantly be checking to see how much damage they do. It just tells you everything right then and does it for you. I also bought an organizer for Gloomhaven Jaws the Lion. I would never play the original Gloomhaven without an organizer. It's such a nightmare to set up. And when I saw that Meeple Realty had one for pretty close to the same cost of the game, I went and bought it. Why? Because I'm not going to play it without that. I'm just not. So
I honestly don't think you have to. I don't think yes, you do for the original Gloomhaven. You have to. Yep. It's too expensive, but you have to.
Yeah,
And then, but for Jaws of the Lion, I don't think you have to. I
I
think
agree.
they
I agree. But you asked me how I'm playing these in 45 minutes, and that's how. Because it still shaves off 5 to 10 minutes of setup. It's just boom, 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 done on the table, ready to go. Like everything is sitting there in its perfect places. Um, and Gloomhaven Helper probably cuts 20 minutes off every scenario. So that's how I will recognize without these things, these scenarios are 1 to 2 hours. I don't think I ever had one over an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes, even the boss ones. And I'm also like not min maxing this. Like part of my enjoyment as a solo player is like you said, like I don't try to play perfectly because it's not fun to me to math it out. So I kind of LARP my character a little bit. Like if I'm tanky, I'm like, what would my character want to do? Like he's going to want to jump over there and try to do some cool stuff and like take on two people. And he thinks he's a tank. And, my pyromancer, my spellomancer, whatever she's called, she's going to do this, that, blah, blah, blah. Like I don't like the only thing I kind of min max is like I just make sure I've got enough damage to kill the things that I need to kill, and I make sure my initiative isn't like stupid. So I'm like going last every round. But otherwise, I try not to overthink it to sort of mimic that feeling, you know?
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, do you LARP, like, when you make decisions, oh God, it actually breaks my heart. What do you think Isaac would say to you if he heard you were playing it by yourself? Do you think
Well,
he would ask you to hit the shame button?
no, the fact that the game is designed to be played solo and that he has a solo expansion for Gloomhaven, and that I
Nope.
think that's how probably half the people who own the game play it. I think he'd be very thankful for solo players.
No. It does say 1 to 4 people on the original. In this Jaws of the Lion, he specifically says, I do not recommend playing it as one person, and you got to be 2 different characters, right? But you
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
should
Well, no,
play
you
2
can't play it with just one character. Yeah, yeah. But
Well, of course,
it's
but
very
you should
happy
be
to
playing it with more people. That to me is part of the experience, and I think like what is partly what you're missing is that not knowing exactly what your other player, your teammate, is going to do, and with the times you bump heads, and that's all interesting. And are you going to take the gold? And because it's not a competitive game per se, but there's a little bit of like a greed element that can play in, which is really interesting when you're playing with other people and making decisions, and the joy of opening something and talking about it with somebody, I think is like really prevalent in this game. And I did play because I wanted to know, and I know that you play these games by yourself. I did play once by myself, and I kept pretending to Alex that I was enjoying it. But yeah, it is not. I no, and also like going back and forth and like strategizing what you're going to do is already kind of enough for one character, but having to do it with both. And then I feel like I'm cheating because it's like I know exactly what I can do, and I am. And now I'm mathing it. I'm out of the narrative, you know?
Yeah, well, I'm not. You're more of a min maxer at heart than I am. I don't really have that. Like I don't enjoy that. So my brain never
It's
wants to go
inevitable. If
there.
you're looking at both cards, if you're looking at
A
both
little,
sets,
a
and you're
little,
choosing what you can do, you are min mathing it.
sure.
Min maxing it, yeah.
Min maxing it, but I would also say that you have the privilege of having a partner who would be down to play something like this with you. I do not. You also have children of the age to play with. If you didn't have any of those things, you'd have no choice but to play it solo.
I've been not playing it. It's been so sad. My original the Gloomhaven that I stopped playing with my friend because I couldn't stand it anymore. It's been sitting there, and at one point, Alex said, "You know what? We should play Gloomhaven at some point because I think I'd like that, and I think this is a good time to do that." Da, da, da. And we didn't at the timing of it. And then, like a few months later, I go, "Hey, babe, let's play Gloomhaven because you said you want to play that, right?" And she goes,
Yeah.
"No, I don't think so. It's not my thing." I'm like, wait, what happened? Go back to that time. Where was that?
Yeah, you lost it.
Yeah.
Well, so look, I agree with you, Jesse. I would prefer to play this with other people, but not instead of playing games I want to play more. Does that make sense?
Eh.
And I don't want to play this more than I would want to play a heavy Euro or an 18XX or whatever the latest hot Euro is. Like I would be playing this every week, and I would kind of be like looking in the corner at Tekenyu or Marco Polo 2 or whatever came out and been like, I'd rather be playing that. So, and that's
This
just
feels
me.
like home to me.
What's that?
This feels like home to me. Like I really appreciate this game on many levels, and there's a lot of things where you can read the city events or something, and it's like this is a situation. You can choose this or you can choose that based on the situation, and some things are just like it's so easy, just like I'm going to choose the right thing, But and then there are some situations like as you were saying, like with Seventh Continent, that just felt arbitrary, and it's just like how would I know that? It's just so random, but he actually rewards you for leaning in and listening. Like, I don't, spoilers. I won't talk specifically about it, but there's things that you wouldn't always aren't totally obvious, but there's a reason why it makes sense. And he gives you clues in the narrative, and he really wants you to listen to it, and he cares. And I really, really appreciate that. And he does it on so many levels. There's so many little things throughout the game that constantly reiterate that, and I love that. So
that was one of the first things I noticed about Gloomhaven when I first played it, the original, was that I really liked Isaac's twist on classic fantasy. I liked that he wasn't standing on tropes. I liked that everything was, sort of an original race, an original world, an original look. Like it all had its own feel, but at the same time was familiar, and felt new but comfortable. Just give me your thoughts overall on the story. Let's talk about the story. What did you find, without spoiling anything? Did you find the story satisfying? Can you without spoiling it, without telling how many scenarios exactly you got into it? Can you tell me sort of how much of the story you think you saw, percentage wise, like that?
Well, okay, I'm about halfway through this one. Is that okay?
Yeah, and how many hours have you played? I think people would like to know about how long the game takes. Ballpark.
Well, look, honestly, each game has taken 2 to 3 hours, but I've been playing with two casual gamers. And I actually, I can have AP, but I actually like these decisions. It doesn't weigh on me. I like spending that time thinking about it and talking about it. And but casual gamers kind of slow us down in different ways. But yeah, honestly, 2 to 3 hours. I think we cranked one out in like an hour. I mean, the intro ones can be done really quick, and I think we could play faster if we were just on it. Like
So what would you say you've played over 10 hours so far?
Oh yeah. Because I halfway through. I don't know, 20 plus hours.
Okay. All right. So maybe, somewhere between 30, 40 hours. I think Isaac said as much that there's about 30 to 40 hours worth of gameplay in here if you get through the whole scenario. All right. So thoughts on the story so far? Is it grabbing you?
Yeah. I feel like, again, I don't want to say too much, and I kind of hinted at it a little bit, that why it's almost even more interesting to me. But like it is interesting how it's building, and just when you think sort of something is just going to be like, it's like, why am I doing this? I feel there's a couple times like, why are we doing this? It feels like we're just kind of going somewhere. I do feel a little forced to go linear, and it makes me miss the original Gloomhaven and how you could make a big decision, just go in a completely different direction, and maybe never see a whole tree branches of stuff. Yeah. And I feel
game
like
has branching paths you can pick from. It's not a linear campaign. Like often when you finish a scenario, you are told to add 2 more possible scenarios. And then, by the time you get to the 10th or so, when you're picking your next scenario, you've got, 5, 6, 7, 8 choices to pick from. And then from there, it keeps branching. So every game can sort of take its own route.
Yeah. This feels a bit more of a linear story. It feels, I'm guessing, so far. I'm not say he goes totally away from the branching, thing that he created, but it feels kind of linear. I feel like he's telling a story as opposed to here's a world, Gloomhaven world that just exists, and go do what you will kind of thing.
I'm interested, as someone who played the original Gloomhaven, did you realize this was a prequel?
Oh, I did miss that.
Yeah, I only knew that because I had read interviews with Isaac about it. But yeah, and I think it probably says it somewhere in the rulebook. Maybe I just glossed over it. But yeah, this is a prequel to the original Gloomhaven. This is the prologue, sort of. And I'm going to just go ahead and say this. I didn't complete the game, but I read the whole scenario book. Do you want me to hit the button, Jesse? I'm going to hit the button.
Shame.
Really, thank you.
Shame.
Well, I wanted to give our listeners
Shame.
a full review and my full thoughts on it, and I read through the whole story, and without spoiling anything, of course, I'm just giving you my generalized feeling of it, of someone who now knows the whole story of Jaws the Lion. I love the writing, I love the characters, I love the world, I love the tone, but I have the exact same problem with this one that I had with the original Gloomhaven, is that the actual narrative never really grabbed me. And I had the same thing. I love the characters, love the world, love the tone, love the writing. I can't state that enough. That was one of the first things I realized while reading event cards in the first Gloomhaven. I like the writing. I like Isaac's writing. I think it's captivating and fun. As someone who does it for a living, I enjoyed it. I didn't feel like I was being, they were dumbing it down for me. I didn't feel like it was, written for kids. I didn't feel like I was reading a YA novel. No offense to people who love YA novels. God bless you. I enjoyed it. It felt great. But I never found myself actually caring or even really remembering the storyline. And I had the same issue in Jaws the Lion.
Well, I don't know. I think this is more about the adventures. To me, again, this is about the experience of the crew. And I like the storylines. I guess, how do you compare it? I don't know. Like, is it Lord of the Rings, or like, are you going to really remember these characters? And like, is he failing because I can't name a character from, that I came across from the first Gloomhaven? I don't know, maybe. But to me, it's more about the adventures we went on. Again, I feel like he really captured this world that exists, and there's some storylines that are going on, and they kind of like come out and they peter out, and that just happened. Or maybe it didn't happen to you. You never heard that. But maybe somebody else can tell a story in their sort of parallel universe. I don't know. I think it's really fascinating. Maybe not perfect, but really does some really, really interesting things to me.
Yeah. One of the things I have the least to complain about is the story here. I mean, even though it didn't grab me, like, it's just the whole package, the whole world he's created. I think it's fantastic. And I think it's admirable what he did. Just in creating a whole new fantasy world. And it feels almost like a sub-genre of fantasy that he's created now. So let's move out of story and move into mechanics a little bit. Tell us just briefly the basic mechanics of Gloomhaven for people who don't know.
Well, you're going to be, you got your deck of cards, maybe like 9 to 11 cards roughly. And
how many characters come in the game?
There are, well, in this one, there's 4 you can choose from. I'm actually really curious. Actually, I think I know which one you picked. Well, you picked.
I played all 4. I've played all 4 now.
Okay. Well, if there was one that you would have picked, I'm curious if you can guess what I chose. Because you'd be wrong.
Yes, you chose the Quattro Demolitionist.
Oh, shut up. That's true.
Yeah, I know you, bro.
Don't. I was going to choose the Hatchet guy.
Yeah, I know you. What did I choose?
You were the red. What's his name? I forget his name.
The Red Guard.
Yeah,
that was the first character I chose. Well done. We both know each other well. I love a tank. I love a good tank. I either go heals or tank, and I always go heals. So lately, I've been going tank in anything I play.
All right. So you got these
4 characters in the box. They all play very differently. Yeah. How do they play?
Yeah. And you each card, basically, you got the top and the bottom. And you're going to play 2 cards, and each card is going to have an initiative value in the center of the card, and you can sort of play either one. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're going to play this card or that card first, but everyone's going to reveal at the same time. Here we go. What their initiative essentially, and that's going to determine between 1 and 100, and in an ascending order, who's going to go in what order between you guys and the monsters. And then when it's your turn, you're going to play your 2 cards. You're going to play the top of one card and the bottom of the other card, and typically the tops are attacks and maybe some heals, and then the bottoms are moves. But there's lots of, depending on your character, there's lots of variance with that. But that's in general. And the interesting thing is, so as you play your cards, they go in the discard pile unless they have an X on them, in which case they're lost. Right. And that's important because when you when you run out of cards. This is not like deck builder. You're just going to shuffle them back and there you go. You lose another card. You have to do a short rest. You're forced into I got to take a breather here, and you will lose a random card unless you decide to long rest, and then you can control it. It takes a whole turn to do a long rest, but you'll heal a little bit and you'll get to like untap your cards and all that. Did you want to say something, Matt?
No, yeah, no. It's just that when you take a long rest, you get to pick the cards you lose from the whole
Yes,
scenario.
yes.
Yeah, and
So
your
then,
cards are your life.
yeah, they are your life. You come back, you get your cards back, and then you're spending them. And man, there's some really powerful cards that have those X symbol on them. But boy, you use all those and you're done. All of a sudden, like I'm out of the race. Finney learned a hard lesson that. But and also the ones that are persistent, that are like ongoing powers that you put at the top, you can't have too many of those either, because you're just like, whoa, all my cards are either lost or at the top, and now I don't have anything to shuffle. So Finney learned a good valuable lesson. Um, and you're taking turns and you're going through the dungeon, and yeah, I think that's the general gist of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And to me, the mechanics are the star of the show here. Look, I love the world. I love the characters. I'm fine with the story. Slightly disappointed, but love the tone. Love the world. But the mechanics to me are the meal here. And the sort of play 2 cards, choose one top, one bottom of either of them mechanic that Isaac created here. Excuse me if another game has used this and I'm just ignorant of that. But I've never seen it before, and I think it is elegant, and the decision space is chunky and exciting, and every turn is fun. Just that basic loop of, oh, I'm running out of cards. Oh, the timer's going down. Oh, but I've got my bomb cards that if I play them, I lose them permanently. But like, I bet I should play them, but like, when am I going to play? Like, if I don't play them, that's not good. But if I play them too early, that's bad. And so the timing of that, if there's a boss in the game, it's usually quite obvious when to use them. But there isn't always a boss, and it isn't always clear. And yeah, that push and pull of, I want to do good stuff, but I don't want to do it all too quick. It really feels like a hand management, resource management game, where the resource being the cards in your hand. That feels like a Euro, not like a dice chucker.
Right. And then there's also the modifier deck, right? So you're gonna plan to make an attack.
Speaking of dice, there are no dice.
And so every attack you're gonna make, you're gonna also flip over a card from your modifier deck, and they're gonna be like mostly zeros, and there's a good amount of negative. There's a few negative ones, there's a few plus ones. There's like 1 + 2, 1 - 2, and then there's like a ×2. This is like your bless card, and then your curse card is like a complete cancel, right? And then as you level up, you can swap those out. There's these perks that you can get, and you can basically like remove 2 negative ones, right? And so you're like, culling your deck, and so you're put all your power cards in there over time. Now, Alex, who's new to this game, she plotted. It was perfect. She had this thing. She had him lined up, and combo card, combo, boom. This is going to be, now she's going to do, at the time it was like 7 or 9 damage, which she had never done before.
Here comes the null.
And there it was. And she like froze.
Yeah.
She couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And she actually was turning red. And I have never seen her in a game that affected. And she just goes,
F this
she
game.
goes, no. She goes, no. She goes, that's not okay. And I go, babe, that is part of it. Like, enjoy it, because that devastation that's Gloomhaven, babe. It's like, because you're also gonna have those times when you're not gonna do enough, but then you hit the bless, you're gonna hit the 2 times, and it's gonna be great. You need those ups and downs.
So
okay, go ahead.
I think this is a good point to talk about my least favorite thing in Gloomhaven.
Okay.
And that is losing. I don't think losing is fun in Gloomhaven. I really don't like redoing a scenario, especially when it's an hour, especially when I lost because of luck, especially when the first 45 minutes of the scenario weren't as exciting as the last 10, and now I have to do them again. Like, honestly, if that happened to me, I would just draw another card. Because if it meant I was going to lose this.
I know you do that. I know you do that. You play sometimes, by yourself. Yeah. Nobody's there to tell you.
Sometimes, not always. But you know what? That's not a testament to anything other than my enjoyment of the game, which is not high enough to want to do it again if I've lost. Like to me, if I lose a scenario in Gloomhaven, I'm not doing it again. Like I don't like it enough to do it again. Like the fun for me is the exploration, is the new.
I
To
agree.
replay it, I don't like the game enough for that.
Well, so I agree. And the question is, what would you do differently?
Nothing. I just don't think this is totally a game for me. Like I think this is the best version of this game, that of this genre of dungeon crawler campaign games, D&D with set rules and mechanics, D&D with Euro mechanics, where the mechanics are 70% and the LARPing and the story is 30%. To me, this is the best version of that. I just don't think that's my bread and butter. I think I like it a lot. I mean, look, I bought like a $30 insert for this game. Like I don't do that if I don't like it. I don't do that if I'm not invested and want to like really get the most out of the experience. But you know, my time is precious, and if I'm gonna lose a scenario that I spent an hour and a half on because I drew a null on my big combo play and I had a 1 out of 30 chance of doing that, nah. Like I get to choose how I spend my time, and that's not my jam.
I will say most of the time I play it for keeps. When I played with Rolo and them, like we played everything for keeps, and I wish sometimes we didn't, but we made a pact we were going to do it that way. But he messed up. But this time,
I feel like that's the honorable way to play. That's how it's designed, of course.
yeah. But this time, like in playing with them, like, and also because they're noobs, and I was also trying to understand as much as I could about the game before reviewing it. So I wanted to get through. I was incentivized to make sure everything's done well. Again, my burning eyes situation today, I was literally like, doubling over. I can't see. I'm constantly my tears can't produce. I'm not crying per se, but my eyes are constantly tearing and burning. And I can't see, and so I'm constantly just like, I have hot, warm claws on my eyes constantly. And Alex thankfully was running the game at that point, and so we were missing certain things from that I could have helped Finn with, and then there was the situation that was just we were not going to make it, and then and me and Alex could make it, but Finn couldn't, and then it was like, you know what, the daddy's hand of God like came down, and you were rescued, Finn, because it was not we were not going to lose that time. He was not prepared for that. I will say, I asked Finn afterwards, like, what are some things he didn't like about the game? Because he really, really, really enjoyed it. And he said the main thing he doesn't like is playing for hours to kill a boss and only getting 5 experience.
6, yeah, totally.
A small reward. Or like no gold. By the way, how did I get Finn to play? Like, he likes this kind of stuff too. He's really getting into strategy stuff, and he's playing Slay the Spire now himself. But I did tell him he wasn't sure he wanted to commit to a long game, especially a long board game. But I told him I have this gem system for in real life. Like a gem is $1. So when he does good things, I give him gems, and when he does bad things, I'll take gems away. And that's like when we go to Target. Instead of him going, hey, Daddy, can you buy me a toy? Blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, how many gems you got? So we do it that way. So we do. And so I said, Finn, okay, we're going to play this game. You've got to play with me on Friday, on Saturday, and Sunday before this review. And every piece of gold you find in the game, you get a gem. And he's like, okay. And he got like 14 to 20 gems first match. And he was like, yes. And he got 2 in the next one, 2 in the next one, and none in the last one we did.
Yeah.
So, but he still wants to play. So, well, but I did tell him, by the way, I did tell him, I did talk to him. Sorry. I said, now let me ask you, like, you imagine the designer also understands that people they love gearing up and buying things. And so he's not trying to just make it so you don't get gold, right? So imagine that he knows over a period of time of, let's say 5 scenarios or something, you're going to get 100 gold. And is it more interesting that you, every time after a match, you get 20 gold and then 20 gold and then 20 gold, 20 gold, 20 gold? Or is it more interesting to get 20 gold, 10 gold, 5 gold, 50 gold, Yeah. It's more interesting to have that variance, I think, because you feel more, you appreciate it more. It's more exciting. So I think he got that. And Isaac really leans into this. I feel like he really gets gloomy, man. Sometimes this is like D&D, but it's gloomy. It's like, oh, dang, that happened. Wow.
Right.
but it
So
rewards you.
this is a brutal game. This is and what I like about Jaws the Lion more than the original Gloomhaven is that it doesn't start out brutal. The first Gloomhaven, that opening scenario, I think it's badly designed in that it's like it's a nice like smack you in the face welcome to Gloomhaven, but it's not
Yeah,
fun.
right.
It's not fun. Most people don't win the first time, and like the first Gloomhaven, like if the first Gloomhaven had like this sort of tutorial session where it like holds your hand for a couple scenarios, I think it would have I would have even been a bigger hit than it was. Like that opening scenario, the first one is not fun. You lose, it beats you down. You go like, this game is mean, and like also the progression system is brutally slow, like you said. Like in when you complete a game, you get 6 experience plus whatever you happen to get during the game. So there are some in-game experience points you can get, but like it costs like 45 to level up. So like that's a lot. Like you're maybe averaging 10 to 15, like so it's 3 or 4 scenarios where your character is static and not changing other than
Well, now,
potentially
you,
buying some gear.
and what level are you? You're about halfway through, I think, too.
Yeah, I got to 4.
Yeah, so I got to 5.
Yeah, and you get, and 5 is, and this is again not a spoiler. If you look inside your thing, one of the pack says don't open this till you get to level 5. So you're chasing level 5 because something cool is in there. Not a spoiler again. It is written when you open up all your cards. There's a pack in your little box that says don't open this till you hit level 5.
Yeah, and it was interesting. It's interesting for sure. And we had to stop because because again the eyes, the tears. But I finally got to level 5, and I got to see this sort of special thing, and I was like, oh man, I can't wait to play.
Totally. Do you think you'll finish the campaign?
I think so. Finney's already informed me we're going to play like every night, next weekend.
So that's great. I'm glad, and I would like to hear next time we do an episode. Tell me how it all ended. We'll do a little.
I will. And by the way, I on the gold thing though, and look, I also wanted to make Alex enjoy the game more, and so I let her have more of the gold and the treasure chests, and she made no qualms about taking all of it. And same with Finney. And when they finally played together, they're like, "Hey, I'm the one who gets the gold."
Right.
And so and since you're not supposed to share gold, which I actually like as a mechanic, but you wouldn't understand that, Matt, because that never came up for you.
No, one character was much richer than the others. Just
right.
That's true, and I was like bummed about it. The other guy needed
something. But okay, so my I guess one of my problems with the gear is they don't do a whole lot, and they don't need to do a whole lot every time. Like I like Slay the Spire, like there's some awesome boss relics and stuff, and then there's like some smaller things, but I still feel like they do something. And sometimes there's items in there I go, yeah, I would never use that. I know, or just like one time I'm gonna spend 30 gold and this will work once, and I don't have a lot of cards. I don't have the time to do long rests, like so I don't know. So that's kind of like, I guess that kind of bothered me. I wish they made the gear stronger and then compensated it by making the monster stronger as well.
So yeah, I can see that. You don't really get that like, oh, I'm a god now feeling in this game ever. Like you always feel like you're under the gun. And I did get one item at a point in the game that was very strong. That was a specific event item that I got that was like, oh, this is cool. This is a game changer. It was one that came about, sort of randomly. It wasn't one that I bought. So the item shop is stingy. There's some cool stuff in there, that gets added later on. But yeah, it's expensive, and most things are like not wild. Like wound a monster once in a scenario, like add a wound token, and that's it. Like, and it costs like 50 gold, and you're like, oh, okay. Like, I'll use that like maybe 10 times, maybe.
But at the same time, a lot of these games are really close, and I feel like, how did he know? Like, I feel like he really, really studied it, and it makes sense. Like, I respect it.
They are balanced often to come down to a final flip of your modifier deck, and that to me is also a part of the problem. Like, they are designed so well to be close that very often you lose on a card draw, and that to me can be disappointing.
It is interesting because you don't really get that. I mean, it's not the same game, but like that Binding of Isaac, Slay the Spire, that wow, I have created this like OP synergy that I am just trouncing everyone. It's amazing. And you never really get that feeling because, oh, you're this level, so you're going to play this much harder, as opposed to the alternative, which is you have no chance in some of the in Slay the Spire, and because I just couldn't get the synergy, So I guess I don't know. That's this trade off.
So let's talk about some of the differences here between original Gloomhaven and Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. So first off, price. It's less than half the price. It's $50. The original costs 120 retail. You don't need a $60 organizer on top of it. You can buy a $30 one if you want. I agree with Jesse. Absolutely not necessary. But I'm me, so I had to. So
You can play
the
these characters in the original Gloomhaven if that's something that you're interested
that's
in.
true too. That's right. You can take these characters and pop them into your campaign, or vice versa.
Right? Would you do that? I know you wouldn't. I don't know.
I haven't, no, but I backed the next Gloomhaven game, the next big box game, Frosthaven, and I'm excited to try that, mainly because of one change in here that I loved more than anything else. So in the original Gloomhaven, the reason that you needed an organizer was for all the chits and all the things, but also to help you organize all the map tiles. So it was a game where you would build a set of tiles and searching for the different map tiles and finding the right ones and putting the map together and bumping it and having it all move around and then putting it back together and adding the doors and then adding the traps and then putting the monsters out. And it was an hour until you were playing. In this game, the map tiles are gone. All you do is open a booklet to a page and the whole map is right there and you play on the book.
Why not?
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you. Thank you. I'm never going back. And by the way, he has now said, message received, and he is now printing a scenario book for Frosthaven and the original Gloomhaven that can be purchased separately that will remove all the map tiles and put it all into a book.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. And by the way, they also have, you go, oh, okay, well, you can open up, the scenario book and you know how big the maps are going to be in general, but actually there's the supplemental scenario book and the maps will tell you when to put that, to apply that. Sometimes it's just text information, and most of the time it's actually an additional
whole other page. Yeah, so the maps get big and take up multiple pages. And I would imagine with the original Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, you're going to need a couple of those because I would imagine some of them are going to get big. But you know what? Here's the biggest plus to it. And immersion and artwork is a big thing for me in these games. You were limited to the artwork printed on the tiles that came with the game. So while there was a good amount of tiles in Gloomhaven, there was only so many configurations they could come up with, or so many looks. Like every dungeon was either like an outside area or a dungeon underground, and that was kind of it. But by printing these in a book, every map can have totally different locations and art, and you could be fighting on a snowy landscape in one thing or on a pirate ship on the next, and you can't do that if you're printing map tiles because you can't have so many tiles that you're using different ones with different art for each scenario. But with a book, you can. And I think that's a huge boon for Gloomhaven going forward, is that, the world that can be created by having a different map and different art every time is huge.
Do they have like fan scenarios and is there I feel like they should create I don't know, Portal Haven or something.
Gotta be. I'm not deep enough in the world, but I guarantee you there's entire fan campaigns. Has to be. And fan characters, I guarantee you it's all out there.
Yeah.
So those are two of the big differences. So let's talk briefly. He did change some rules, and I think they're better. Oh, also, obviously, there is a 3 scenario tutorial that teaches you the rules. Nobody has to actually read a rule book. You can just literally put it on the table and start playing, and the first 3 scenarios teach you the game. So there are some rule breakers for people who played a lot of the original. I've read online and in the forums, some people are actually, if you played a lot of the original Gloomhaven, it can be frustrating playing Jaws the Lion because things you're used to are different now. And it's hard to remember that. Like they're just things you take for granted. Like, for example, jump works differently. Jump used to before still be affected if you were jumping out of difficult terrain. Now it's not. Monster focus, the tiebreaker is different than it used to be. You can share items between scenarios. You can never do that. City events are now mandatory. They used to be optional, and they take place after a mission. Monsters can actually loot in the game. That was never a thing that happened in Gloomhaven. They can loot treasures from you. Which is
I will say that happened once, and Finn was devastated.
Oh yeah, awful.
Looting not just coins, but the treasure chests.
Yeah. Line of sight is different now. Line of sight is now any part of the hex to any part of another hex instead of only corner to corner. Like this is a good example of it. Selling items. When you sell items for half their value back to the store, it is now rounded up instead of rounded down, which I think is a wonderful metaphor for all of the changes of this game. They're all just making things a little bit less gloomy, a little nicer, a little easier, rounding off the edges a little bit. And you know what? Some people might, especially who played 100 hours of Gloomhaven, might go, I like my gloom gloomy. Don't lighten up my gloom. Let's keep it brutal. But for me, for someone who likes this a good amount, but I'm not in love, I don't need the extra gloom. I'd like to keep the plot going. I'd like to keep the story going. I'd like to not lose as much. And I think this does that a lot for me.
Yeah.
Final thoughts, Jesse?
Oh, I will say another thing that's different is I don't remember there being as much obstacles. And I don't know if it's because, and also like my character bounces off of walls and does damage based off of that, and using obstacles, destroying them, and then using the destruction to cause more damage. And I was like, oh, I'm this character, and I don't really remember that many opportunities in the original Gloomhaven. But maybe by the very nature of these maps being maybe more narrower because they're in the book. Yeah. Not always, but I don't know. I feel like it became relevant. But do you remember that many obstacles in the first one?
I don't, nor as many traps. It felt like there was a lot of stuff littering the board and giving you a lot of stuff to play with. Maybe that's just him, trying to spice it up a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, they do have to, because of the nature of an 8.5 by 11 page. I think they have to funnel you through these scenarios a little bit differently.
So yeah, okay. So I guess my final thoughts are like I love Gloomhaven. I've been wanting to get back to it, and I'm really glad this came out. Because basically, I think I got my son so interested in it that he will go back and play the original Gloomhaven with me. Because I want to get back to the sort of, I want to see what's going to happen with all of that and what I've created there. And I feel like what we're on right now is it's interesting. It's fun. I'm glad it's more accessible. And, in a way, I wish the storylines went a little different. It feels a little small, but it's supposed to be that way. Yeah. But actually, I really like it as a prequel. Like it makes sense to me, and I like it more for that. But yeah, I feel like almost play this first, and then play Gloomhaven.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I would say if you've never played Gloomhaven, 100% play this first. It's less than half the cost. I think Isaac has learned a lot in his years since publishing Gloomhaven. I think we see that new expertise in his design skills here. I think it's a better game. I think it's a better story. I think it's given to you smoother. I think the rules are stronger and simpler. I highly recommend this if you are interested in Gloomhaven and never played before, to try this. If you love Gloomhaven and you put 100 hours into that campaign and beat it, then go ahead and pick this up. If you didn't finish Gloomhaven and you own Gloomhaven, just play the Gloomhaven you have and finish that. And if you want more, here you go.
And if I have one piece of advice, anybody who's thinking about playing this game, please don't solo it.
As I will speak for the designer when I say, please go ahead and solo it if you have no one to play with, because it's pretty great. It's pretty great. I'm sure Isaac would And I think there's a large community of people who solo this game exclusively. And I'm sure they would love to have a dedicated partner to play with at home. But if they don't, or if they even just prefer playing alone, I think you get a fantastic experience with Gloomhaven.
It's definitely gloomier.
Yes, sure. Solo games always are. So that's Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, available. Your mileage may vary, but it's at Target if you can find one. It looks like at the moment they are in stock at my local Target in Los Angeles, and if they're in stock here, they got to be in stock everywhere because we sell out of things instantly here in LA.
I got mine Eagle Rock.
Well, there you go. That is Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.